Hi, I'm Tim Carter, AskTheBuilder.com. I'm here at my own home, and a few nights ago we had a problem. It's all my fault. Yep, I make mistakes too. This copper water line was filled with water. It dropped below 32 degrees, and it completely froze, and it blew out this 90. Look at this giant piece of copper here. It used to go around the bend here. It's crazy. It completely blew it out. These are soldered, but guess what? We are not going to use this to make the repair. You know what we're going to do? You're going to love it. We're going to just use these three things to repair this problem with the copper tubing. This is a copper 90. This is a simple coupling. And this is a ball valve. But here's what's unique about them. They have a special O-ring inside. And that O-ring is what makes the seal, so it's waterproof. But this tool, this special tool, will crimp the end of the fitting and make it tight around the tubing so that it stays leak-proof for years. I say we get started. One of the first things you and I need to do is we need to determine how far does the copper tubing extend inside the ball valve. And the easiest way I think to do that, because you can't get a tape measure down in there, is I actually slide the ball valve onto the piece of copper tubing, and then we make a pencil mark. I like to make sure that the end of the copper tubing is clean, and I put a little bit of saliva on it to lubricate the O-rings. So there it is. This copper tubing is way down in there, almost over an inch or so. I then make a mark with a pencil. We will pull this off. Look how far that goes, from there to there. It's a long way. All right, so now we need to measure that. Pretty important. 1.5 inches. The next step is this ball valve. If you look here, it can pretty much go anywhere. It's not really critical in my situation where it goes. So, but I want to make sure, and the 90 is going to end up being here. I don't want it to be this close. That would be a big mistake. And I don't want it to be this close. So I would prefer to have maybe a 2 or 3 inch gap between the two fittings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the ball valve right here. I know that's where I want it. I can make a mark up here. And then remember, we knew that it had to be 1.5 inches that it extends down into the ball valve. So I mark 1.5 inches below this pencil line. That's where we're going to cut the copper tubing. Let's do it. I've made the pencil mark 1.5 inches down from the other one. It's time to cut the tubing. Because the tubing is so close to this trim, we need to use a mini tubing cutter. All right, we can pull it away a little bit, which is nice. So the tubing cutter's got a really sharp wheel on it, and you'll see how it works in just a second. Watch this. It's really, really wonderful. So there's my second pencil mark right there. I've got the tubing cutter right where I want it to go. Bingo. You tighten this little wheel right here. So I only tighten it just a little bit, and then you rotate it around the tubing. And you can see what it does. The little wheel starts to make a cut. So you rotate it one turn, and you can maybe rotate this just a 1/16 of a turn. You don't have to rotate it much. You never want to screw it too tight because you'll crimp and bend the pipe. Sometimes you might use a wrench. If you have trouble turning this, feel free to use the channel lock pliers. Now it's cutting through. Here we go. There we go. So that's cut. So that's how you do that. The tubing's cut. It's time to put the ball valve on. I want the handle to the ball valve to go this way. So I go ahead and rotate it. Remember, with these ball valves, the valve only goes one way. It will only go that way. I can't pull it towards me. It won't go. So it's best to go ahead and get it in the position that you want it so you don't make a mistake. Because if you put it in upside down, look what would happen. It would be aimed the wrong way. Once again, the tubing's clean. I put a little saliva on it to lubricate it so that it slides easily through the O-rings and doesn't damage them. the ball valve is in place. I don't want it to move because it can happen. Sometimes it might slide down, as crazy as that sounds. It might get out of alignment. I like to go ahead and press that top fitting right now to lock the ball valve in place. I've got the Pro Press tool here. We've got the correct jaws, 1/2 inch. You just have to open up the jaws, put it around the ridge. There's a ridge on the press fitting, and that aligns with a groove in the jaws, and then we simply press the fitting. Can you believe how fast and simple that is? I'm going to make you into a plumber in no time flat. Just like the ball valve, we need to determine how far in the copper tubing goes into the Press 90 fitting. You've already got a pretty good idea because you can see how this starts to taper down. So right where this ridge starts to go down, that's about how far it's going to go in. But let's do it right. So I cleaned off the tubing. I put a little saliva to help lubricate the O-ring. I slide it on, and then I simply take a pencil, make a pencil mark, pull it off, and that's how far that the tubing goes into the Press 90 fitting. It's now time to measure the piece of tubing that's going to go between the ball valve and this 90. Let me show you how I do it. I want to put the 90 right where it belongs, which is right there. And I measure between the edge of the ball valve and the top of the Press 90, and it's exactly 2 inches. All right, so we know that the tubing went into the ball valve 1.5 inches, and I measured, and the tubing goes into the 90 7/8 of an inch. So it's 2 plus 1.5 inches, which would be 3.5, plus 1 inch, which would be 4.5, minus 1/8 of an inch, which would be 4 3/8 inches. So we need to cut a piece of tubing 4 3/8 to go that distance. As you can see, we've got the short piece of pipe, we've got the 90 connected to the ball valve, but let me tell you what I did not do. I have not pressed these joints yet, and that's for a reason. We need to make sure we get everything put together to make sure they're perfectly aligned before we press anything else. So now let me show you where I'm going to put this coupling. I don't want to put a small tiny piece of pipe like that, and I don't want to get this too close to here. So I can put this fitting right about here, and I'll be happy with where that's going to work out. So what I need to do is make a pencil mark here at the end of this coupling, which is right here. And you know the trick of what we did. I went ahead and slid the copper tubing into here, and I determined that the tubing goes in 3/4 of an inch. So we need to make a mark 3/4 of an inch this way, and we're going to cut this off and get rid of the old, broken, frozen 90. I'm going to do that right now. That's how easy it is to use this mini tubing cutter. Now, it's time to put on the coupling. Once again, the tubing's clean. I put a little saliva on to help lubricate it. Put it on. It's out there already. And now, this is where it's got to be aligned perfectly. So now we just have to measure the distance between these two fittings and then add the distance that the tubing goes into each fitting. Let's do it right now. It measures 5/8 of an inch, and the tubing goes into the coupling 3/4, goes into the 90 a little over 3/4, so 3/4 and 3/4 is 1.5 inches, and then the 5/8 would be 2 1/8 inches. Let's cut a piece of tubing that length. I've got the piece of tubing cut. I put everything together. Let's take a look at it. Look here. We're ready to go. But here's what we have to do. You can see now why it's so important to have not pressed this 90, because if it would have been turned one way or the other, I would not have been able to get this little piece in there. So now everything's aligned perfectly. We have to press how many joints? Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let me show you how fast that's going to be. You're not going to believe it. Ready? Can you believe how simple that is? You can do plumbing repairs. You may not be able to afford the tool. It's a very expensive tool, but you might be able to rent it at a tool rental place. You could do many, many plumbing joints in a day with this tool, especially if you have gone ahead and you have pre-planned out all of your lengths. Imagine that. Imagine putting an entire system together and then coming through in an hour's time and pressing maybe 50 or 100 or 150 joints. These tools, simply amazing. You can do plumbing repairs just like I did. I can't wait to hear about it. Make sure you put it in the comments that you had a great success story. And also, don't forget, go to askthebuilder.com, sign up for the free newsletter, because you'll get free tips like this each and every week. And one last tip, make sure you start watching me on my live stream. I live stream every week on the Ask the Builder channel on YouTube. I'm Tim Carter, askthebuilder.com. If you want to discover more home improvement tips, go to askthebuilder.com.